They laughed at the oldest car in the building. 10 minutes later, nobody could find a single word to say. The annual Pacific Coast Auto Show had always been a celebration of speed, innovation, and prestige. Under the bright convention hall lights in downtown Los Angeles, polished vehicles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars gleamed like jewels. Electric hypercars rotated slowly on elevated platforms. Luxury SUVs sat beneath giant digital displays. Industry reporters moved through the crowd with cameras ready, searching for the next headline. Everywhere Ethan Walker looked, there was money, status, and confidence. Yet none of that seemed to matter to him. He sat quietly behind the wheel of a faded silver coupe parked near the far end of the exhibition floor. The paint reflected the lights unevenly. The body lines were old-fashioned. Compared to the surrounding displays, it looked completely out of place. Some visitors walked past without even glancing at it. Others slowed down just long enough to smile politely before moving on. Ethan didn't seem bothered. His attention remained fixed on a small photograph tucked inside the dashboard. In the picture, a smiling woman stood beside a little girl in front of the same car years earlier. His fingers brushed the edge of the photo before he carefully slid it back into place. Across the hall, excitement suddenly spread through the crowd. Cameras turned. Conversation stopped. Victoria Hayes had arrived. The CEO of Hayes Mobility was one of the most influential figures in the automotive world. At 38, she had built a reputation for transforming transportation technology and turning struggling companies into billion-dollar success stories. Reporters surrounded her immediately. Executives rushed forward to shake her hand. She smiled confidently as flashes exploded around her. Ethan barely looked up. Beside him stood Lily, his 10-year-old daughter. Her blonde hair was tied back neatly, and her oversized event badge bounced lightly against her jacket. She noticed the growing crowd around Victoria and glanced at her father. "That's the CEO everyone talks about?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Looks like it." Lily studied the crowd. "Do you think she'll see your car?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe." Before Lily could reply, Victoria and her entourage began walking directly toward their section of the exhibition floor. The group stopped near several custom-built vehicles before eventually reaching Ethan's display. Victoria's eyes moved across the silver coupe. Her smile tightened. One reporter laughed softly. Another raised a camera. Victoria folded her arms. "Is this part of the historical exhibit?" she asked. Several people nearby chuckled. Ethan remained seated. Victoria stepped closer. "No offense, but this looks like something that should be parked in a museum storage room." More laughter followed. The cameras remained focused on her. Ethan slowly stepped out of the vehicle. His expression never changed. "It's not for everyone," he said calmly. Victoria glanced around at the crowd. "Well, that's certainly true." A few spectators laughed louder this time. Lily lowered her eyes. Ethan noticed immediately. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The bright lights overhead reflected across the polished floor while hundreds of people watched the exchange unfold. Victoria looked at the aging coupe one final time before turning back toward the cameras. "Innovation moves forward," she said confidently. "The future doesn't wait for nostalgia." Reporters nodded. Several audience members applauded. Ethan simply smiled. Sometimes the future arrives from places people stop looking. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "That's a nice line." More laughter. Then she walked away. The crowd followed her. The reporters followed her. The attention disappeared as quickly as it had arrived. Soon only Ethan and Lily remained beside the silver coupe. For several seconds neither spoke. The enormous hall buzzed with activity around them. Finally Lily looked up. "Dad." Ethan glanced at her. "Yeah." "Did what she said bother you?" Ethan looked across the convention center toward the distant stage where Victoria was now giving interviews. Then he looked back at his daughter. A gentle smile appeared on his face. "No." Lily seemed surprised. "Really?" Ethan nodded. "People can only judge what they think they understand." She followed his gaze toward the car. "And they don't understand this car?" Ethan looked at the vehicle for a long moment. Then his eyes drifted toward the trunk. Just for a second. Almost as if something important waited inside. Something nobody else had noticed. Something he had spent years protecting. "Not yet," he said quietly. Around them, the auto show continued like any other year. Reporters chased stories. Executives made deals. Visitors admired the newest technology money could buy. But hidden beneath the aging shell of the silver coupe was a secret capable of changing everything. And before the day was over, the same crowd that laughed would find itself standing in complete silence. The noise of the exhibition floor faded behind them as Ethan and Lily stepped away from the crowd and moved toward a quieter corner near the preparation bays. The bright excitement of the main hall felt distant there. Mechanics checked displays. Engineers reviewed specifications on tablets. Event staff hurried between stations carrying clipboards and schedules. Yet Ethan seemed completely detached from the pressure surrounding him. He opened the driver's side door of the silver coupe and sat inside for a moment, his hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. Lily leaned against the fender and watched him. She knew that look. It was the same expression he wore whenever he was thinking about her mother. The same quiet look he carried late at night in the garage when the rest of the world had gone to sleep. "You are thinking about Mom again," she said softly. Ethan smiled without looking up. "A little." Lily nodded. She understood. Some memories never really left. A gentle silence settled between them. Nearby, the sound of pneumatic tools echoed from another preparation area. Overhead, the convention center lights cast long reflections across the polished concrete floor. Ethan reached into the glove compartment and carefully removed an old envelope. The edges were worn from years of handling. Lily recognized it immediately. "The letter?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "The same one." He unfolded the paper slowly. The handwriting inside belonged to Emma Walker, his wife. Even after all these years, the sight of her words could stop time. Ethan read a few lines quietly to himself before folding it again. "What does it say?" Lily asked. Ethan looked at his daughter. "It says that people spend too much time trying to prove who they are." Lily tilted her head. "That sounds like Mom." Ethan laughed softly. "It does." He placed the letter back inside the envelope. She always believed that good work speaks for itself. Lily glanced toward the exhibition hall, where Victoria Hayes was still attracting attention from reporters. "Do you think she is right?" Ethan followed her gaze. "Your mom?" Lily nodded. "Yes." Ethan smiled. More than ever. Across the building, cameras continued flashing around the major manufacturers. Interviews streamed live online. Industry analysts debated which company would dominate the next decade. Yet none of them knew that one of the smallest displays at the event carried a story stretching back nearly 10 years. A story that began in a small garage outside Sacramento. Back then, Ethan had been one of the brightest engineers in the industry. His designs had attracted attention from major corporations. Investors wanted meetings. Recruiters called constantly. The future seemed limitless. Then everything changed. When Emma became ill, success stopped mattering. Contracts became distractions. Promotions lost meaning. Ethan walked away from opportunities that most people spent lifetimes chasing. He chose hospital rooms over boardrooms, family over recognition. And when Emma eventually passed away, he chose Lily over everything else. The industry moved on. New names replaced his. New companies took the spotlight. Eventually, people stopped asking where Ethan Walker had gone. That was exactly how he wanted it. Lily climbed into the passenger seat and looked around the interior. Most people only noticed the car's age. They never noticed the details. The dashboard was immaculate. The instruments were custom-built. The engineering hidden beneath the metal had taken years to perfect. "Do you ever wish you stayed?" she asked. Ethan looked at her. "Stayed where?" "In the big companies." He considered the question. "Sometimes I miss building things with larger teams." Lily waited. "But," Ethan smiled, "I never miss the things I would have lost." Lily's expression softened. She understood exactly what he meant. A voice suddenly echoed through the loudspeakers. "All demonstration participants, please report to the evaluation area within 1 hour." Around them, activity immediately intensified. Teams rushed to complete final checks. Engines started. Staff members hurried across the floor. The competition portion of the auto show was approaching. Lily looked toward the rear of the car. "Are you going to show them today?" Ethan followed her gaze toward the trunk. For a brief moment, something unreadable crossed his face. Not fear, not pride, something deeper. The result of years of patience, years of sacrifice, years of quiet work completed when nobody was watching. He reached into his pocket and touched a small key. "Maybe," he said. Lily smiled. "They are not ready." Ethan laughed softly. "No," he agreed. "They probably are not." Just then, 2 engineers walking past slowed near the display. One glanced at the silver coupe and shook his head. Can you believe they actually approved that thing for the demonstration? The other chuckled. It will be over in 30 seconds. Neither man noticed Ethan standing nearby. Neither noticed Lily hearing every word. They continued walking. Lily frowned. Ethan simply smiled. People are allowed to underestimate what they do not understand. He closed the driver's side door and looked once more toward the exhibition floor, where Victoria Hayes remained the center of attention. Then he glanced back at the trunk. Hidden beneath its ordinary appearance was the reason he had come, the reason he had spent years working in silence. And before the afternoon was over, the entire industry would finally discover what he had been building all along. Within the next hour, the atmosphere inside the convention center changed completely. What had felt like a glamorous exhibition now felt more like a championship event. Thousands of spectators gathered around the main demonstration arena. Giant screens descended from the ceiling. Industry experts filled the front rows. Reporters secured positions near the judging platform. Every major manufacturer wanted attention. Every engineer wanted recognition. Every company wanted to leave with headlines. Ethan and Lily sat quietly near the edge of the staging area while participants prepared for their demonstrations. The silver coupe remained parked between vehicles worth 10 and 20 times as much. Under the bright lights, it looked even more ordinary than before. One by one, spectators walked past and dismissed it without a second glance. That thing actually made the finalist list? Someone asked. Maybe they needed an extra car to fill space, another replied. A few laughed before continuing toward the larger displays. Lily heard every word. She looked toward her father, expecting at least a trace of frustration. Instead, Ethan was reviewing a small notebook filled with handwritten calculations. His calm never seemed to change. Nearby, a bright red electric hypercar rolled onto the demonstration platform. The crowd erupted into applause. Powerful speakers filled the arena with dramatic music while company representatives introduced their latest breakthrough technology. Screens displayed acceleration figures, battery efficiency ratings, and engineering achievements. Cameras flashed continuously. The presentation lasted 15 minutes and ended with enthusiastic applause. Another manufacturer followed, then another. Each vehicle arrived with fanfare. Each company delivered polished presentations. The audience cheered. Analysts took notes. Investors watched carefully. Through it all, Ethan remained invisible. At one point, a young reporter approached his display. She looked at the silver coupe and glanced at her camera operator. "Do we have time for a quick interview?" she asked. The camera operator shrugged. "Probably not worth it." Ethan smiled politely. "That is all right." The reporter offered an apologetic expression before moving toward a more popular exhibit. Lily watched them leave. "That seems unfair," she said. Ethan closed his notebook. Sometimes people only see what is loud. Lily looked around at the giant displays surrounding them. "And we are not loud." Ethan laughed softly. "No, we are definitely not loud." Across the arena, Victoria Hayes stood near the judges' platform speaking with industry executives. Her presentation earlier had been one of the event's highlights. Reporters continued following her wherever she went. She appeared confident, composed, and completely in control. Then something unexpected happened. One of the event organizers approached her carrying a tablet. Victoria glanced at the screen. Her expression changed slightly. "Who?" she asked. The organizer pointed toward Ethan's section. Victoria followed the direction with her eyes. For a brief moment, she looked genuinely confused. "That silver coupe?" The organizer nodded. Victoria almost smiled. "Interesting." She handed the tablet back and continued walking. Meanwhile, the afternoon schedule moved forward. The demonstrations entered their final stage. Judges began narrowing the field. Engineers discussed performance metrics. The crowd grew larger as rumors spread that several surprising entrants had made it farther than expected. Ethan and Lily finally received their call to move into the preparation lane. The silver coupe rolled forward slowly. For the first time all day, it occupied a visible position near the center of the arena. Hundreds of spectators noticed it immediately. Conversations started. Some people pointed. Others laughed. A few looked genuinely curious. The giant overhead screens displayed participant information. Name, Ethan Walker. Independent entry. Spectators searched their memories. The name sounded familiar to some of the older engineers. Yet nobody could place it. Not completely. Not yet. As the car approached the staging area, a senior judge glanced at the registration file. His eyes lingered on Ethan's name slightly longer than expected. He frowned. Then he looked again. The expression lasted only a second before disappearing. He said nothing. Ethan stepped out of the vehicle and performed a final inspection. Every movement was deliberate. Every check was routine. Lily stood beside him. "Nervous?" she asked. Ethan looked toward the arena. Thousands of people filled the seats. Cameras pointed toward the demonstration area. The entire industry seemed to be watching. Yet his answer came without hesitation. "No." Lily smiled. "Me neither." Ethan looked at her and smiled back. The loudspeaker crackled overhead. "Participant number 14, please prepare for evaluation." The arena lights shifted. Attention moved toward the staging lane. Somewhere in the audience, another laugh echoed when spectators noticed the aging silver coupe. But this time, not everyone was laughing. A few engineers leaned forward. A few judges exchanged curious glances. And near the center of the arena, Victoria Hayes found herself looking toward Ethan's vehicle again. Something about his confidence no longer matched the car everyone believed they understood. And for the first time all day, curiosity began replacing amusement. The demonstration lane stretched across the center of the arena like a runway beneath the bright white lights. Every seat appeared occupied now. Spectators filled the lower sections. Executives stood along the railings above. Journalists clustered around the media platforms with cameras pointed toward the next participant. Ethan Walker stood beside his silver coupe while event staff completed final checks. The atmosphere carried a strange tension. Most people still expected disappointment. Yet enough curiosity had developed to keep everyone watching. A host stepped onto the main stage and smiled toward the crowd. "Our next participant is an independent entry from Sacramento, California. Please welcome Ethan Walker." Polite applause scattered through the arena. Nothing more. No dramatic music. No giant promotional video. No corporate branding. Ethan simply nodded and walked toward the presentation area. The contrast could not have been more obvious. The previous participants had arrived surrounded by marketing teams and executives. Ethan arrived alone. Well, almost alone. Lily remained near the staging barrier, watching proudly from a distance. The host glanced at his tablet. "Mr. Walker, would you like to explain what makes your vehicle unique?" Ethan looked toward the audience. Thousands of eyes stared back at him. The giant screens projected his image throughout the arena. "Not yet," he answered calmly. A few people laughed. The host smiled awkwardly. "Not yet." Ethan nodded. "I would rather show than explain." More laughter spread through the audience. Somewhere near the front rows, a reporter whispered, "This should be interesting." The host cleared his throat. "Very well. Please proceed." Ethan returned to the vehicle and opened the driver's side door. Before entering, he glanced briefly toward Lily. She gave him a small thumbs up. He smiled back. Then he climbed into the car. The engine started. Or at least everyone expected an engine. Instead, the arena speakers picked up almost nothing. A faint hum drifted across the demonstration floor. Spectators exchanged puzzled looks. The silver coupe rolled forward smoothly. No dramatic roar. No aggressive acceleration. No theatrical effects. Just quiet motion. Several people frowned. One engineer leaned toward another. "What powertrain is that?" The second engineer shook his head. "I have no idea." The coupe completed a slow lap around the evaluation track. Judges observed carefully. Data monitors displayed basic telemetry. Everything appeared normal. Perhaps too normal. The crowd's interest began fading. Some spectators checked their phones. Others looked toward upcoming participants. Then one of the judges noticed something. He leaned closer to his monitor. "That cannot be right." Another judge looked over. "What?" The first judge pointed at the screen. His expression changed immediately. Both men stared silently. A third judge joined them. Within seconds, all three were studying the data. Ethan continued driving as if nothing unusual was happening. In the audience, Victoria Hayes noticed the sudden activity among the judges. Her attention sharpened. Something had changed. She could feel it. The silver coupe completed another lap. The judges continued reviewing information. One of them requested a verification check. Another requested secondary measurements. Event technicians hurried between equipment stations. A quiet ripple moved through the evaluation area. The crowd sensed it immediately. Conversation slowed. People began paying attention again. The host received a message through his earpiece. His eyebrows lifted. "Ladies and gentlemen, We have received a request from the judging panel for additional verification. Murmurs spread across the arena. Additional verification almost never happened during routine demonstrations. Victoria folded her arms. Her eyes remained fixed on the silver coupe. Ethan completed a third lap and returned to the presentation area. He stepped out of the vehicle. The chief judge approached him. "Mr. Walker, may I ask a question?" Ethan nodded. "Of course." The judge glanced toward the telemetry screen before speaking. "Are these numbers accurate?" Ethan smiled slightly. "They should be." The judge studied him carefully. "And you are confident in that answer?" "Very." The crowd could feel the tension building now. Reporters moved closer. Cameras zoomed in. Something important was happening, but nobody understood what. Victoria took several steps forward. "What numbers?" she asked. The chief judge looked toward her. For a brief moment, he seemed uncertain whether to answer publicly. Then he turned back toward the display screen. "According to the preliminary data," he said slowly, "this vehicle is operating at an efficiency level that should not be possible." Silence spread through the nearest sections of the arena. Victoria stared at the screen. Ethan said nothing. The judge continued reading. "Either our equipment is malfunctioning." He paused. His eyes returned to Ethan. "Or this vehicle contains technology we have never seen before." The laughter that had followed Ethan all afternoon disappeared completely. Not because anyone understood the truth. Not yet. But because for the first time, the room realized the quiet man everyone dismissed might be hiding something far more extraordinary than anyone had imagined. The arena no longer sounded the way it had an hour earlier. The laughter was gone. The casual conversations had faded. Even the reporters who normally rushed from one story to the next now remained fixed on Ethan Walker and the aging silver coupe parked beneath the bright exhibition lights. The giant screens displayed rows of telemetry data while technicians performed verification after verification. Every test returned the same result. Every measurement confirmed the impossible numbers. The chief judge stood with his hands on his hips, staring at the monitor. "Run it again," he said. A technician nodded. Moments later, fresh readings appeared. The numbers matched. Another judge adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "That cannot be a calibration error." Nearby, Victoria Hayes remained silent. She had spent her career evaluating new technology. She understood how difficult genuine innovation was. Breakthroughs were rare. Most products were simply improvements on existing ideas. But what she was seeing now felt different. The room could feel it too. Ethan stood calmly beside his car as if none of this surprised him. The attention, the questions, the growing confusion among experts. He simply waited. One reporter finally stepped forward. "Mr. Walker, can you explain what makes your vehicle so efficient?" Ethan smiled politely. "Not yet." The same answer as before. Only this time nobody laughed. Another reporter raised a microphone. "Are you using a proprietary energy system?" Ethan shook his head. "I would rather show you than talk about it." The crowd grew even more curious. Across the arena, social media feeds began exploding with speculation. Clips from earlier in the day resurfaced online. Footage of people mocking the silver coupe spread rapidly. View counts climbed by the minute. New videos followed. Industry analysts posted reactions. Engineers debated theories. Nobody seemed able to explain what they were seeing. Lily watched everything from the staging area. A small smile appeared on her face. She had seen this before. Not the attention, not the cameras, but the process. For years, she had watched her father disappear into the garage after dinner. Night after night, weekend after weekend. While other people relaxed, Ethan worked. While others chased recognition, he chased solutions. Most of the world had forgotten him. Lily never had. She walked over and tugged gently on his sleeve. "They are starting to figure out something is different." Ethan glanced down at her. "Maybe." Lily laughed softly. "Definitely." Before Ethan could respond, another announcement echoed through the arena speakers. Due to unusual evaluation results, the judging panel has authorized an extended demonstration period for participant 14. Murmurs spread immediately. Extended demonstrations were extremely rare. Victoria looked toward the chief judge. "What exactly are you hoping to verify?" she asked. The judge hesitated. "Honestly." Victoria nodded. The judge glanced toward Ethan's vehicle. "We are trying to determine whether what we are seeing is real." The answer hung in the air. Not exaggerated. Not dramatic. Simply honest. Ethan remained silent. The judge turned toward him. "Mr. Walker, there is one question I would like answered." "All right." Why enter this competition? Ethan looked toward the crowd. Thousands of faces stared back. Then his eyes settled briefly on Lily. Because I made a promise. The judge seemed surprised. A promise? Ethan nodded. A long time ago. The answer created more questions than it solved. Yet nobody pressed further. Something about the way he said it discouraged interruption. The arena lights reflected softly across the silver paint of the coupe. For a moment, the vehicle looked less like a forgotten relic and more like something waiting patiently for the right moment. Victoria studied Ethan carefully. The confidence she saw in him no longer matched the image she had formed earlier. He was not defensive. He was not trying to impress anyone. Most surprising of all, he did not seem interested in proving anyone wrong. There was a quiet dignity about him that felt increasingly difficult to ignore. One of the senior engineers from another manufacturer approached the judging panel carrying a tablet. You need to see this. The judges gathered around the screen. Their expressions changed almost immediately. One frowned. Another looked genuinely shocked. Victoria stepped closer. What is it? The engineer turned the tablet toward them. It displayed an old industry archive. A technical conference from nearly a decade earlier. The photograph showed a younger man standing beside a prototype power system. The image quality was not perfect, but the face was unmistakable. Ethan Walker. The judges exchanged glances. Victoria stared at the screen. Something deep in her memory stirred. She had seen that name before. Somewhere. Years ago. In research papers. Industry reports. Patent filings. Yet before she could fully connect the pieces, Ethan reached into his pocket and removed a small metal key. Lily noticed immediately. Her eyes widened. The key. The one he never let out of his sight. The one connected to the secret hidden in the trunk. Ethan looked toward the evaluation area, then toward the growing crowd. Finally, he looked at Lily. She smiled and nodded. And for the first time all day, Ethan seemed ready to stop hiding what he had spent years building. The moment Ethan stepped toward the rear of the silver coupe, the atmosphere inside the arena changed again. The conversation softened. Reporters lowered their voices. Even the judges seemed reluctant to interrupt whatever was about to happen. Thousands of people watched as he inserted the small metal key into the trunk lock. The click sounded almost insignificant, yet it carried through the silence like the turning of a page. Lily stood near the barrier with her hands clasped together. She had seen what was inside countless times. She knew what the world was about to discover. Ethan slowly lifted the trunk lid. For several seconds, nobody moved. At first glance, there was nothing dramatic about what they saw. No glowing lights. No futuristic displays. No oversized machinery designed to impress an audience. Instead, the trunk contained an elegant arrangement of compact engineering components built with remarkable precision. Neatly organized modules connected through an intricate network of custom hardware. Everything looked purposeful. Everything looked finished. The chief judge stepped forward first. His eyes widened immediately. Good grief, he whispered. Another judge joined him. Then another. The crowd could not yet understand their reactions, but the experts clearly did. Victoria Hayes moved closer. Her confident posture remained intact, but curiosity now outweighed skepticism. She studied the system carefully. The longer she looked, the more serious her expression became. Who designed this? One engineer asked. Ethan looked at him calmly. I did. Several people exchanged glances. The engineer frowned. By yourself? Ethan nodded. Mostly. The answer triggered another wave of murmurs. Building something this sophisticated normally required teams of specialists, research departments, and millions of dollars in development costs. Yet the man standing before them had spent the past decade working quietly in a garage while raising his daughter. The chief judge crouched beside the trunk. This architecture is completely different. Another engineer nodded. It solves efficiency problems people have been struggling with for years. Victoria folded her arms. If that is true, why has nobody seen it before? Ethan's eyes drifted briefly toward Lily. Because I was not building it for investors. The answer caught Victoria off guard. Then who were you building it for? Ethan smiled faintly. Someone who believed I should finish what I started. For a moment, he thought of Emma. The late nights. The hospital visits. The conversations about dreams that still mattered. The promises made when life felt uncertain. The crowd listened carefully, sensing there was more beneath the words than he was saying aloud. The chief judge eventually stood and faced the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, We are authorizing a special challenge. Excitement spread immediately through the arena. Cameras swung toward him. Reporters moved closer. This system will undergo a live comparative evaluation against current industry benchmarks. The audience erupted into anticipation. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You want to test it publicly? Yes, the judge replied. Today, Ethan appeared completely unfazed. The judge looked toward him. Do you agree? Ethan answered without hesitation. Absolutely. A few spectators gasped. Others applauded. The challenge would place his work directly beside technologies developed by some of the largest automotive companies in the world. Failure would be public. Success would be impossible to ignore. Victoria stepped forward. If we are doing this, Hayes Mobility will participate. The crowd immediately reacted. One of the most powerful companies in the industry was entering the comparison. The judges nodded. Other manufacturers quickly volunteered as well. Within minutes, the demonstration area transformed into a competition zone. Technicians prepared equipment. Engineers verified testing conditions. Giant screens displayed upcoming evaluation categories. Energy efficiency, range performance, system response, reliability. The entire industry seemed to be holding its breath. Through it all, Ethan remained remarkably calm. Lily eventually walked over and stood beside him. You knew this would happen, did not you? She asked quietly. Ethan smiled. I hoped it might. She looked toward the massive arena filled with executives, reporters, and engineers. That is a lot of people. Ethan followed her gaze. Earlier that day, many of those same people had dismissed him without a second thought. Now they could not stop watching. People are not really here for me, he said softly. Lily looked confused. Then what are they here for? Ethan glanced toward the open trunk, toward the years of work hidden inside, toward the promise he had carried for nearly a decade. The truth, he replied. Across the arena, Victoria Hayes continued studying the system. Something about it felt strangely familiar. Not the hardware itself, the thinking behind it, the elegance, the simplicity, the refusal to follow conventional assumptions. And as preparations for the challenge continued, a question she could no longer ignore began forming in her mind. Who exactly was Ethan Walker before the world forgot his name? The challenge began 30 minutes later. By then, every seat inside the arena was filled. Additional spectators crowded along the upper walkways. Industry websites streamed the event live. What started as an ordinary demonstration had become the most talked-about moment of the entire auto show. 3 vehicles were positioned side by side beneath the bright evaluation lights. A flagship model from Hayes Mobility, a prototype from another major manufacturer, and Ethan Walker's aging silver coupe. On appearance alone, the comparison seemed ridiculous. One vehicle represented billions of dollars in research and development. Another came from a company employing thousands of engineers across multiple continents. The third had been built quietly inside a small garage outside Sacramento. Yet appearances had already begun losing their power over the crowd. The chief judge stepped to the center of the arena. The evaluation will consist of identical operating conditions across all 3 systems. Independent verification teams will monitor every result. The audience applauded. Cameras zoomed in. Engineers opened laptops. Victoria Hayes stood near her company's vehicle with a composed expression, but inside she felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Not fear. Not yet. Just uncertainty. She watched Ethan across the arena. He stood beside his coupe with the same calm posture he had maintained all day. No celebration. No arrogance. No attempt to capitalize on the attention. He simply waited. The first phase began. Energy efficiency. The vehicles entered a controlled operating cycle while technicians monitored consumption rates. Initial readings appeared on the giant screens overhead. The crowd watched carefully. At first, the numbers remained close. Then the gap began growing. One engineer blinked and checked his tablet again. Another adjusted his glasses. A third quietly requested confirmation from the monitoring team. The silver coupe continued producing results that seemed impossible. Not slightly better. Significantly better. The audience started whispering. Victoria stared at the display. Her confidence remained, but questions now crowded her thoughts. The second phase followed. System response. Again, the silver coupe performed flawlessly. No hesitation. No irregularities. No compromise in efficiency. The judges exchanged increasingly concerned looks. Concern not because something was wrong, but but because everything appeared right. Too right. By the third phase, nobody was speaking casually anymore. The arena had become a room full of professionals confronting something they could not immediately explain. The giant screens displayed final comparative data. The numbers settled, then remained unchanged. Silence followed. Not applause. Not cheering. Silence. Thousands of people stared upward. The silver coupe had outperformed every benchmark. The chief judge looked at the verification team. Are the results confirmed? The lead technician nodded. 3 independent reviews. The numbers are accurate. A ripple moved through the audience. Reporters rushed to send updates. Analysts typed furiously. Engineers whispered to one another. Yet the loudest reaction came from those who said nothing at all. They simply stared. Victoria slowly approached Ethan. For the first time that day, there was no trace of amusement in her expression. How? She asked quietly. Ethan glanced toward the vehicle. Years of work. Victoria shook her head. No, that is not enough. Ethan smiled gently. Sometimes people spend so much time improving old answers that they stop asking new questions. The words landed harder than any public criticism could have, because deep down, Victoria knew there was truth in them. Nearby, Lily stood beaming with pride. She watched executives, journalists, and engineers struggle to process what her father had accomplished. To her, it felt completely normal. She had always believed in him. One of the senior judges suddenly received a message on his tablet. His eyes widened, then widened again. He looked toward Ethan. Mr. Walker. Ethan turned. Yes. The judge hesitated. We found something in the industry archives. Several nearby engineers looked up immediately. The judge rotated the screen toward the panel. A collection of patent filings appeared. Technical research papers. Conference records. Innovation awards from nearly a decade earlier. One name appeared again and again. Ethan Walker. The realization spread slowly at first. Then all at once. Engineers recognized the references. Executives recognized the projects. Industry veterans remembered the stories. The forgotten engineer. The brilliant designer who disappeared at the height of his career. The man many believed would change the future of transportation before he vanished from public view. Victoria stared at the screen. Finally, the memory clicked into place. She had studied some of those papers years ago. She had quoted them during presentations. She had built portions of her own company's development strategy around ideas that originated from the man standing in front of her. The arena grew quiet once more. But this silence felt different. Earlier, people doubted him. Now they were trying to understand him. And standing beneath the bright exhibition lights, Ethan Walker remained exactly who he had been all along. A father. A builder. A man who never needed the world to notice in order to keep his promise. For several long seconds, nobody seemed interested in speaking. The giant screens continued displaying Ethan Walker's name beside achievements many people had forgotten. Research papers, patents, conference presentations, innovations that helped shape an entire generation of automotive development. The realization moved through the arena like a slow wave. Engineers who had entered the industry years earlier suddenly remembered reading his work in college classrooms. Executives recalled meetings where his ideas had been discussed as the future of transportation. Investors recognized projects that once attracted enormous attention before mysteriously disappearing. And standing in the center of it all was a quiet single father who had spent most of the day being overlooked. Victoria Hayes remained frozen in place. She looked from the archive records to Ethan and back again. The pieces finally fit together. The unusual confidence. The absence of self-promotion. The refusal to defend himself when others mocked his car. None of it came from weakness. It came from certainty. Ethan had never needed validation because he already knew exactly what he had built. One reporter finally broke the silence. Mr. Walker, why did you leave? Instantly, dozens of microphones pointed toward him. Cameras zoomed closer. The entire arena seemed to lean forward. Ethan looked toward the audience. Then he glanced at Lily. Life changed, he said simply. The reporter waited for more. Ethan smiled. Sometimes there are things more important than being recognized. The answer hung quietly in the air. It was not dramatic. It was not defensive. Yet somehow it carried more weight than a long explanation ever could. Another reporter stepped forward. You disappeared when your career was taking off. Some people thought you retired. Others believed you joined a private research company. Ethan shook his head gently. No. Then what happened? Ethan looked down for a moment before speaking. My wife became sick. The room grew even quieter. And after she passed away, I had a little girl who needed her father more than the industry needed another engineer. Nobody interrupted. Nobody laughed. Nobody checked their phones. The truth had a way of silencing distractions. Lily felt her eyes growing wet. Not from sadness. From pride. She remembered those years. The packed lunches. The school projects. The evenings when her father helped with homework before disappearing into the garage to continue working on a dream nobody else could see. He had never complained. Never acted like he sacrificed anything. He simply showed up every day. Victoria lowered her gaze briefly. The memory of her own comments earlier returned with uncomfortable clarity. The jokes. The assumptions. The certainty that she understood the man standing beside the silver coupe. She realized now that she had not understood him at all. One of the senior engineers approached the judging panel carrying another set of documents. There is more. The chief judge reviewed the information and slowly shook his head. Incredible. The engineer pointed toward Ethan. Several concepts used throughout the industry originated from his early work. The judge looked genuinely stunned, including some systems currently considered standard practice. Nearby executives exchanged astonished glances. The implications were enormous. Many of the technologies companies celebrated today could be traced back to ideas Ethan developed years ago. Yet he never stood on stages claiming credit. He never appeared in advertisements. He never built a public image around his accomplishments. He simply kept working. The chief judge eventually stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, today we expected to evaluate a vehicle. Instead, we discovered a legacy. Applause began slowly. One section of the audience. Then another. Then another. Soon the entire arena was standing. Thousands of people rose to their feet. The sound filled the building. Yet Ethan appeared almost uncomfortable with the attention. He nodded politely and looked toward Lily. She smiled through tears and gave him a small wave. That seemed to matter more than anything else. Victoria watched the exchange and understood something important. The greatest achievement revealed that day was not hidden inside the trunk of a car. It was not the breakthrough technology. It was not the forgotten patents. It was the character of a man who remained kind after being underestimated, remained humble after proving everyone wrong, and remained focused on what mattered most even when the world stopped paying attention. As the applause continued, the chief judge received one final report from the verification team. He read the numbers carefully. Then he looked up at Ethan with an expression that bordered on disbelief. Because the full significance of the technology had only just become clear. And what the judges were about to announce next would leave the entire automotive industry speechless. The applause continued for nearly a full minute before gradually fading. Yet what remained afterward felt far more powerful. Silence. Not the silence of confusion. Not the silence of embarrassment. The silence of understanding. Thousands of people stood inside the arena looking at Ethan Walker in a completely different way than they had only a few hours earlier. The chief judge stepped forward holding the final verification report in his hand. His voice carried clearly across the room. After multiple independent reviews, our panel has confirmed that Mr. Walker's system represents one of the most significant efficiency breakthroughs we have evaluated in the past decade. A fresh wave of applause filled the building. Engineers nodded in disbelief. Executives exchanged stunned glances. Reporters hurried to publish updates. But Ethan's attention never left Lily for very long. To him, this moment was never about headlines. The chief judge continued. In recognition of this achievement, we are awarding the highest innovation honor of this year's auto show to Ethan Walker and his team. The audience rose once again. This time the standing ovation seemed even stronger. Ethan accepted the award quietly. No dramatic speech. No celebration. Just a sincere nod of gratitude. Then something unexpected happened. Victoria Hayes stepped onto the stage. The room immediately grew attentive. Earlier that day, she had been one of the loudest voices questioning him. Now she stood only a few feet away. She took a slow breath before speaking. Mr. Walker, I owe you an apology. The arena became perfectly still. Victoria looked directly at him. I judged your car before I understood it. More importantly, I judged you before I knew your story. Ethan listened without interrupting. Victoria continued. I saw an old vehicle and assumed I understood its value. I saw a quiet man and assumed I understood his potential. I was wrong. The honesty in her voice surprised many people. Ethan smiled gently. Thank you. Victoria shook her head. No, thank you. She glanced toward the silver coupe. Today reminded all of us that innovation is not always loud. Sometimes it is built quietly when nobody is watching. The audience responded with warm applause. Ethan extended his hand. Victoria shook it. There was no bitterness between them. No need for revenge. No need to embarrass anyone. The lesson had already been learned. That was enough. As the ceremony concluded, people continued approaching Ethan. Engineers wanted to ask questions. Executives wanted meetings. Investors wanted conversations. Yet the moment that mattered most happened away from the cameras. Later that evening, after the crowds began thinning and the exhibition lights dimmed, Ethan and Lily stood alone beside the silver coupe. The arena felt almost peaceful now. The noise of the day had finally settled. Lily looked up at her father. Mom would have loved this. Ethan smiled. His eyes drifted toward the photograph still resting inside the dashboard. Yeah, he said softly. I think she would have. Lily wrapped her arms around him. You kept your promise. Ethan felt emotion catch in his throat. All those years. All those late nights. All those moments when nobody believed anything would come from the work. They had led here. Not to an award. Not to recognition. But to this simple moment with his daughter. We kept it, he corrected gently. Lily smiled. The two of them stood quietly beside the car while the final workers packed equipment across the arena floor. The silver coupe looked exactly the same as it had that morning. The paint was still worn. The design was still old. Yet somehow everything felt different now. Not because the car had changed. Because people had finally looked beyond it. And perhaps that was the lesson hidden inside the entire day. Character does not need an audience. Dignity does not need to announce itself. The strongest people are often the ones who spend years doing the right thing without recognition, trusting that truth will eventually speak for itself. As Ethan and Lily walked toward the exit together, the giant convention hall grew quiet behind them. The laughter was gone. The assumptions were gone. Only respect remained. And sometimes, that kind of silence is the most powerful victory of all. If this story reminded you that kindness, patience, and quiet strength still matter, share where you are watching from, and tell us about someone in your life whose character inspired you. And if stories like Ethan's stay with you long after they end, we would be honored to have you join us again for the next journey.